It's about 85 degrees, more or less constant temperature within, and it's heavy humidity. So it's, it's sticky, but it's only 85, but it's 85 degrees. It's not, now you're walking on the equator, you cross the Atlantic Ocean, you're now in Africa, you're in the middle of the Sahel Desert. There's no trees around, a little bit of scrub here and there. Same June day, same solar temperature coming down, same amount of sunlight coming down somewhere,
Oh,
and you're in
okay.
the desert. It's 120 to 140 degrees.
Right.
That's the
Okay.
power of trees.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Bolduck. My guest today is Joshua Harrison. And Joshua has two companies, sort of. One I can say, and the other I'm going to have him say because I am scared to mess it up. So the company that I can say is Leaf Island, and the other company he's going to say. But so I'm excited to share this because Joshua, one, is super duper smart. He's been studying this stuff for a long, long time, and two, he's talking about like greening up our cities to cool. So, Joshua, thank you so much for approaching me. Thank you for being here. And I'm so excited to share this.
Well, hi, Amy. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here with you today. And just to help set the stage, I do have two institutions. One's a company and one's a center. So the company is called Leaf Island, and that deals with urban infrastructure, green infrastructure primarily. And we, as Amy, you said, we do work to bring leaves back into the conversation in urban areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and why that's a pretty good idea from my
Yeah, we
perspective.
will.
Um, and the other is called Center for the Study of the Force Majeure, and that's an art ecology science research foundation. It's located at the University of California at Santa Cruz. And the complicated word, Amy, force majeure, is a French term that means acts of God, and we use that, and it's in every insurance contract. It's the thing in the contract that when the insurance companies say to you,
Sorry.
sorry, you said it's storm damage and you had a big bad storm, but we call it wind damage, and wind is really not covered because it's an act of God. So we look at that ecologically. What are the things that we have done as human beings over the last 500 years that we call acts of God, but are really the knockoff effects of bad decisions we've made, primarily about burning too much fossil fuel? And what are some of those things? And so we look at things like the fires in the West and how you can rethink of a better system for connecting sort of a circular economy where the harvesting of the timber and the managing of the timber improves the health of the forest. We
Mm.
work on ocean health and ways to bring people back into a better understanding of the ocean. And then here at Leaf Island, I work on urban infrastructure, urban metabolism, and what does green infrastructure mean in a context of a city. I'm based in New York, which is kind of this big concrete and glass and steel
That's a good
place as you can
motivator,
imagine.
like
So
living
I
in
want
that hot city.
right, and the urban heat island effect is actually what drove this company into being. About 5 years ago, um, there was an international competition about um, how to deal with the heat island effect at a place called Hunts Point Market. Hunts Point Market's the big central food distribution center of New York City. It's actually the biggest food center in the United States. And it's a series of these giant warehouses, large flat warehouses. And it's, the people who, and it's in a tough community, and which is why one of the reasons they put it there, of course. And it's got lots of trucks, so it's got air pollution like crazy. It's got lots of dirt. It's very hot. And so a friend of mine and I were talking about that competition and said, I bet we have some ideas, because if we can this is a low flat warehouse, if we can actually plant on that warehouse, we can make a huge difference to the heat island effect. And not only that, because when you work and think about plants, you don't just do one thing. You get a lot of benefits from one action. Mm-hmm. So those same plants that help cool your roof also adhere what they call the sub 2.5 micron particles. Those are the little dust particles that are the most toxic for everybody's lungs. There's the stuff that nothing else filters. Well, they stick to plants. And then when it rains, they drop into the soil and become inert and stop bothering people. So you filter that. The other thing that happens in the city is, of course, it rains a lot. And New York, like about 80% of the cities in the United States and a big chunk of the cities around the world, has what they call a combined sewer system. That means they designed their sewer systems to hold the amount of water that your toilets use and your bathtubs and your sinks use, and a little bit of margin.
A little extra.
A little extra, not a lot extra. That's going to be key, because that little extra means that in a place that when it rains too much, it overflows. And you know this everywhere you're in a community that that's by a river or by a lake or by the ocean, right, and you get a heavy rain, they say stay out of the river. Why? Because of the combined overflow. In New York, that's 7/10 of an inch in an hour, and it's gone. So that's not a light rainstorm. It's not a trickle. It's not
a ton of rain.
It's not
just a lot at once.
Yeah, and if it happens at that rate, it overflows. It overflows the combined. So those are the three things that there are many other things too. Mm-hmm. Heat, air pollution, and rainwater, stormwater are the three things that if you deal with roofs well. So we submitted a proposal. It was great. We got first prize. We were going to go forward. COVID came and destroyed everything.
Everything's toast, right?
Everything was toast. And so, but we kept the company together. We said, okay, but this is a good idea for a company. We didn't build it as a company. We built it as a project design team. But we said, we're a good team of people. We'll continue to do this. And so, in a place like New York, well, actually, let me just give you and your audience one kind of useful marker about why we're talking about what we're talking about, why it's so important. Imagine you're on the equator and you're in Brazil, and it's a tropical rainforest. It's middle of July. You're in the middle on the equator in the Amazon, hot sunny day in July. How hot do you think it is?
We had this conversation last week, and I don't remember how that goes.
That's right.
It's like the first time for me. Okay, I imagine it's super hot.
It's about 85 degrees, more or less, constant temperature within, and it's heavy humidity. So it's sticky, but it's only 85, but it's 85 degrees. It's not, now you're walking on the equator, you cross the Atlantic Ocean, you're now in Africa, you're in the middle of the Sahel Desert. There's no trees around, a little bit of scrub here and there. Same June day, same solar temperature coming down, same amount of sunlight coming down somewhere. And you're in the desert. It's 120 to 140 degrees.
Right.
That's the power of trees. That's what they do. That's the difference. That's what the cooling effect is. So even on the equator, in the jungle, it never gets above 85 to 90 degrees under tree cover. So we want to bring that to cities all over the place.
Right.
And so in a place like New York, and this is the reason we sort of coined our name, the Leaf Island, I've coined something called the Leaf Island effect. And what that is if you take a city like New York, which is a lot of very tall buildings, but a lot of glass, steel, brick, and concrete, and you cover it with sufficient complexity of plant cover. You cover the roofs, the side, and again, because New York's a vertical city, you have the option of a lot of walls, which quadruples your space, and the flat surfaces on the streets and parks and parking lots with the same amount and quality of leafy green cover that was there in 1660 when Henry Hudson sailed up the Hudson River to the isle, which was then called Mannahatta, you can have the same ambient temperature as it was at that point, or while without removing any of the buildings. And that takes about 35 to 40% leaf coverage. You don't have to cover every building. So basically, you can do it without replacing your existing building stock. That's the power of green infrastructure.
Right. Just use that space.
Use the space, use it wisely, use it well, and not every green roof is the same, and not everything works. And there are lots of other side elements that come into it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the power. And if you do that, you can immediately drop your urban heat 8, 10, 12 degrees on the street, and you'll drop it much more at the roof level. Now, from a building owner's point of view, what does that give you? That gives you a roof that's much cooler. So your air conditioning load is significantly reduced, 25 to 30% in the buildings that we measure.
Right.
In the wintertime, when you don't have the plant cover, you do get the insulation of a green roof, particularly one that's made, as I mentioned, of the kind of insulating capacity that styrofoam has. That ability then gives you insulation. Now that tells you that for a building owner, that does a bunch of things. That also means that the cover gives you, so you have to use material to cover your roof. You're protecting your roof. It's no longer expanding and contracting as much, which is the biggest cause of roof damage is direct sunlight. You're covering it, or you're not hitting it with direct sunlight. And then the heat and cold of your expansion of your joints. So you're smoothing that, you're protecting it from direct sunlight, and you're cooling it. So that turns out, that you can extend your roof life significantly, assuming that all the other engineering things are in place. So from a building owner's benefit, you get those kinds of structural benefits. You have save energy, cooling and heating costs, which of course depend on the kind of building morphology, your building shape could make a big difference about how much of that's distributed, but you will certainly save for the area that's, your top floor or your area, in a big building. And if you're a warehouse building, or a low flat building, those costs are much more visible across the life cycle of the building. For the community, you get a bunch of other effects. For the community, you get the cooling effect.
Mm-hmm.
That cooling effect means if you have enough green roofs in an area, you have a collected neighborhood cooling effect, and suddenly your entire block is cooler.
Oh.
So your entire region. You get the air pollution cleaning effects that we mentioned a little earlier.
Yes.
And you also get, and this is shared jointly between the building owner and the community at large, you get an ability because, we call our roofs floating because the actual plant layer is embedded in a soil structure, which I think I'm not sure if I've mentioned it yet, but as I mentioned on your broadcast beforehand, let me take one slight break to say, we realized we weren't, we realized there are two big challenges for green roofs and green infrastructure in general. And that's keeping it from getting a much broader distribution. The first is the upfront costs. Most green infrastructure is, because it's new infrastructure, is too expensive, just the natural order of how things are. And the best model for this to think about is solar. When I first got into this universe, which is, I'm sad to say, 1978, when I ran the first alternative energy fair in Southern California as a student at UC San Diego, solar electricity was definitely there. Photovoltaics definitely existed, but they were, 50, 60 times what it costs per kilowatt hour of some of the cheapest natural gas and coal.
Right.
Now they're the cheapest fuel around.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to do new solar than any other kind of energy right now.
Right. Can we just back up for a second, Josh, and just can you say that part again? Because I know when you told me the first time that solar has been around for 50 years, it blew my mind because I thought it was a relatively new.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
but then also you ran a fair, a sustainability fair in high school, in
In college.
college. That's like and it was a while ago. So it's
Sorry to say, I like to say it was in the last
oh, you
millennium.
shouldn't be sorry at all. It's really cool. I just love that because it seems like, it's such it's sort of like a hip thing, a groovy, crunchy person thing to be, thinking about the earth and stuff like that. And so it's more of a sort of a new thing, but it's really not. It's
Right.
just been, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Solar,
swept under the
solar,
rug or something.
yeah, I mean, again, all these things are interconnected. They're all related. Green roofs and solar, they're all using solar energy. Wind uses solar energy. Tidal power uses solar energy. Actually, coal and natural gas and what we call fossil fuels are solar energy too. They're just stored and concentrated over the 200 million years it took to compress the shellfish and other living and peat and other things that we then burn. And the problem isn't that they're solar energy. The problem is that we're burning them
We're
too
burning
fast.
them.
Too fast, right? We're not taking it. We're not being smart about how we reabsorb that energy that's been stored. But everything is because everything comes from the sun. The planet came from the sun. We're a chunk of molten chemicals that 3 billion, 4 billion years ago got shot out of what was then the evolving sun and gradually coalesced into the planets that we are and all these other things. It's all from the sun, you know. So it's all solar energy in one way or another. So
Everything is
just
solar energy.
right in that sense. Um, but solar energy, as we understand it, has been around as long as humans have been around. They've always understood the sun is hot and you need to think about it. So you can look at it's remarkable. You can go to the Middle East and look at housing in Iraq that was built 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, and they're using solar cooling. They're using most most people before this century, when they built their houses, whatever they did, they looked at where the sun was placed. They looked at trees to help cool, to provide shade. They used solar was just integrated into everything that we did, sometimes really intentionally, sometimes passively. Um, and then, just in terms of the United States, solar was a really powerful piece of water heating technology, early water heating technology. 25% of the hot water in both Los Angeles and Florida in the 1920s came from solar water heaters.
Oh,
People,
what?
what? Yeah, and so a solar water heater is a really simple thing. It's just plumbing. You stick pipes in the sun. If you're really smart, you paint them black. If you're half smart, you paint them
If you
black.
really want to use it to heat water.
If
Yeah,
you really
okay,
want to
I
use it,
get
you do
that.
that, and then suddenly, and you store it in an insulated tank, and you've let the sun in a hot climate with a lot of sun
Yeah,
heat your water, and then you can, if you're actually using a real boiler, you preheat your water, so your gas fired or your electric boiler gets water that's coming in at 70, 80, 90 degrees and
right.
heating it to 110 or 115
So
degrees.
it'll
So it
clean stuff. And
so
okay,
it'll
I
so it
gotcha.
gets so
Nothing
that
makes me
technical
more mad than people that, I mean, my ex-husband he would buy like the longest water hose for gardens and stuff like that, and he would leave it laying in the
right,
yard and it's full of water, and so I have to like run it all
right,
out so I'm not pouring boiling water on my plants.
right.
That just
But
drives me crazy. But yeah, solar heat.
but
Duh.
appropriately used, that's your shower.
Right.
Appropriate. It's all
Of
about
course.
doing the right thing in the right place, and you know,
Yep.
so you take advantage of it. Because basically the sun falls everywhere. There's so much solar energy falling on the planet that it could replace, if we could effectively use it, it would replace all energy needs we'd ever need for 2 billion years.
Oh my gosh.
That's because it's a ginormous nuclear reactor 93 million miles away, so we don't even have to worry about the radiation.
Right.
It's all taken care of over there.
Right. And so I just want to, so Josh, you've been studying these things since you said 1978,
Yeah,
a
and
couple
a
minutes.
couple
Um,
minutes.
I know you told me the story of how you got into this. Can you tell this to the listeners?
Sure.
Because it was
Solar.
kind of chance, right?
Well, solar happened because I'm a student in San Diego, and it's hot, And we're in the second energy, what was then this, what they called the second energy crisis. President Carter was here, and there was an oil crisis that the Saudi Arabia had decided, and I don't exactly recall. I think it was for various political reasons that they were going to jack up the price of oil, and then Jimmy Carter basically said, okay, we have to reorient the country for less fossil fuel. And he was serious about it. And he did things like impose a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit nationwide. And he did a whole bunch of things that were he was before President Biden, he was by far the most serious president in terms of thinking about how we're going to deal with energy prices. And he was a nuclear engineer. He understood the science. He understood global warming. He, more than any other president, he really understood what the issues were. And he had a strategy which was similar to what Biden did recently in what was originally the Build Back Better plan, but then became the Inflation Reduction Act. To try everything. It was what they called the all of the above thing. So he wanted to support nuclear power. He wanted to support different kinds of natural gas. He wanted to support, and he really, really wanted to support solar, wind, and other what they then and still call alternative energy sources.
Isn't
So
that
that's
so funny? It's such a funny term, alternative energy.
exactly. It's a weird term because actually everything is solar. Everything is
the
solar.
OG.
Yeah, it's the OG. Absolutely. Nothing, we don't exist without solar energy. It's everything. And everything we think of, every power source we think of is indirectly or directly connected to solar energy. Everything.
Right.
There isn't, so that's the background. And so I'm a student. Actually a visual arts student. I'm studying film and communications. And I say to myself, gee, I'd like to learn about solar energy. There's this whole thing. And I'm at a university that's basically got the highest number of Nobel Prize winners of any university per capita in the country.
Wow.
Pretty high level, very big in physics, very big in hard sciences. So I say to myself, that can't be hard. Of course you can find it. And to my chagrin, I found there was no way to learn anything about solar energy under the aegis of the university. After a certain amount of back and forth with it, somebody had the suggestion, said, well, why don't you form a club? And so I said, okay. So I formed something called Students for Solar Energy. And I found one guy in the chemistry department who was himself personally interested in solar energy and had written a sort of a DIY cookbook about solar. Basically, at the point, you basically did what you might call analog solar. Hot water, solar heating through stoves, very cool stuff that's been in use. Also, you can use different ways to reflect sunlight, like take that concept that a lot of people are familiar with of a magnifying glass and using a magnifying glass to set a fire. Use that variations on that theme to heat food. And you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. And a few other sort of uses of solar to sort of capture heat. And photovoltaic was just, it was around. It was kind of like in the laboratory as kind of a cool thing. That certain kinds of silicon wafers were able to convert light into electricity. They weren't very efficient at it. There's this thing called a computer chip that kind of uses a similar technology. So solar was able to ride on the backs of the advances of solar chips and solar building chip technology. And that's a story for another down the road. So I got this. I had a little group. I got a bunch of people. 12 or 15 of us ragtag kids of various ages from various parts of all interested in this thing the university wasn't going to do anything about. And then somewhere I heard that somebody said in campus, well, look, we really don't know very much about solar energy. So I said, okay, so how do you change that? And they said, I was talking to, very into my research. I said, the government has this program where they want to help inform people. And I bet you could talk to them. And I reached out. It was a group called the Energy Resource and Development Association, ERDA, at the time. And they said, well, we have this program because we've never done any big scale programs in Southern California yet, and we'd love to do one. Do you want to help organize it? And I said, sure, of course.
College student.
Yeah, why not?
I love it.
And so we got, so I wrote up drafted a simple proposal, and they gave us like $400,000 to plan an event. At which point, of course, the university got very interested in, having us sponsor something, and we got permission to take over one of the big central squares, and we got and we basically brought in a variety of what was then state of the art energy technologies and people who were vendors and presenters. And we did basically this giant show. And on the solar side in particular, it was mostly solar water heating. So we had basically in San Diego County, I think there were like 15 very artisanal people in the northern part of San Diego County who were making solar installations of various kinds. And we gave them a showcase, and I created a little small subset of that community became sort of an adjunct of Students for Solar Energy, and we basically promoted these guys to the community in terms of, if you want to get solar water heating, here's a bunch of people to talk to, here's what they do, and here's a little bit about each of them. It was very very ad hoc, late 1970s style, do
I
I
think
want
that's
advertising.
so cool, though. I mean, I love just the fact that the government is supporting the college students' um, in just interest in something that's new. And so,
Yeah.
did any government people come to
Well,
like?
the local, yeah, we had all of the local representatives, not local. We had a bunch of local representatives from the IRTA administration.
That's amazing.
We had the field director from the region. We had a few other people there. It was. Um, I have to say that the 70s were much more open than we are now about new ideas and new things. We it's hard to imagine a place where you could actually knock on doors and people listen to you and didn't have 10 layers of gatekeeping. But there was a whole lot less gatekeeping going on everywhere in the
Mm-hmm.
60s and 70s. So the idea wasn't that so much actually that I was a college student, they thought was great because they were looking at how to get into universities. They liked that idea
Right.
because I was, but the mixture there was they hadn't done anything there. They hadn't gotten around. They've been working. I
They're just
think
holding on to that.
yeah, they were mostly, I think, doing a lot of work around MIT and in Boston. There was a lot of alternative energy work. I think Champaign, Indiana, and Chicago. I mean, there were lots of places. There were places where people were doing this were not Southern California. So
Mm-hmm.
they were like, oh, there's a lot of reasons we should be in Southern California. So this would be a great place to do this. So, and these are the people who are talking to us.
Right.
And so, sure, we'll give it a shot. And this is what we have, and this is the budget. And, we'll take a look at it. We're not going to let them, go run away and do crazy things. We're just,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course I got the university meetings and events people. They of course heard about it. They said, "Oh, great, we want to be part of this." But the really great thing that happened was not all of that. The really great thing what happened was we got the administration to change its attitude towards solar. So the university was building a series of what they call colleges, so different groups. And the next one being just built was then called Third College. I guess it was the third
Sure.
group that was coming in. And they agreed to put solar in as many of the facilities that were building for Third College that as they could. And they then committed to adding solar in all future installations that they did. So that was the real benefit of the long-term benefit of that energy fair was it got the institutional inertia of a place that should have already been doing this
Mm-hmm.
to do what it should have already been doing naturally without the need of all of this preamble that I gave you about, coming
Right.
in from
Well, but
nowhere.
so then, California gets the attention of the government and and then it's San Diego University. Is that what you said?
University of California at San
Sorry,
Diego.
University of California now makes this commitment to have solar in all of their buildings,
Right. Well,
or
they
in all
didn't
of
quite
their
live
new
up to that.
buildings.
Yeah, they're new buildings. They didn't quite live up to the full package of it, but they definitely put solar
Oh,
in
I was
some
going to
of
ask
it.
if they're still doing that
Oh,
today.
they're still doing it today.
Oh, awesome.
It's even better today, obviously, because the technologies are
Awesome.
better. They're cheaper, and you'd be kind of silly. And now, actually, what they have now, and this is really exciting if you're in the solar biz, is they've for many years been able to take the same basic technology that's in a solar cell and put it into a film so that you can put on a window. So your window can actually act as not quite as efficiently as a solar cell, but you can actually have a transparent window glaze. They now actually, and there's technology that's very near to commercial grade, where they've been able to take wood lignin and structure and pull uh, basically the dyes out of it so it's transparent and build a wood-based glass equivalent that will also generate electricity when it's lit by light. So it's transparent, made out of wood, and
What?
generates electricity. Fabulous.
So trees
Very cool.
into windows,
Trees into
basically?
windows. It's not commercial scale yet, but it's very
It's
close.
getting there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
I mean,
And so
it's
were
one
you
of
saying
many.
that there's like a film that you can put on
Right.
your
There are
windows
films now that are commercially available. You can put on and that would be part of
that are like a solar panel?
that are solar panels. Some of them do shading. Some of them do, like light intensive glasses. They do, some of them are colored. They come in
Incredible.
massive varieties of shapes and flavors. And they don't convert 100% of the light into or else you wouldn't see anything. They don't convert very much. They don't convert as much as dedicated solar cells, but they convert some, and you have a lot more space. And you're basically doing the smartest thing that nature does and the dumbest thing that people do is nature looks at something and says, I'm going to solve a whole lot of problems with one thing. Our kinds of people, Western people come out of Europe and that tradition, look at a thing and say, oh, there's a particular problem. I'm going to find a particular solution that's going to address that particular problem. And they look at the efficiency of the particular problem, and nature looks at the efficiency of the whole system, and any one piece of it might not be. So if you have a window that's serving multiple purposes, and you're putting a film on it, you're not getting it's not 100%
It's not
conversion into
super
electricity.
concentrated, but it's
It's
better
not,
than nothing.
but it's not only better than nothing, you're getting multiple benefits. So
Hmm.
those benefits aggregate. It's the multiple overlapping interactive benefits that make a natural system so much more effective than an engineered system, unless that engineered system is engineered with that same basic understanding you're looking for the aggregate efficiency. You're looking for how it all puts together, how the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts.
Mm. So it sounds sort of like we need to like adjust our lives to allow nature to do its thing, like what it just
Right.
does
Well,
naturally.
yeah, we used to do that. It's not, we used to do that.
Right.
It's not like we have to somehow become weirdly different people and morph into. No, we just used to pay attention to the things we used to pay attention to and stop paying so much attention to the fact that we don't have to. It's really about attention. We don't have to pay as much attention to doing one thing really well, and we have to pay a lot more attention to how things fit together. And if we do that,
That's very deep.
that's how we get way beyond where we are now without like turning ourselves into pretzels of whatever.
Right.
I mean, if you want to look at what is a happy life, I mean, do we want to burn coal and natural gas and stuff carbon in the air? Or do we want to have comfortable lives where we're able to talk to people, we're able to live nicely together, where we're able to put food on the table, we're able to raise families, we're able to be sociable, we're able to go out and enjoy the woods or the beach or the backyard or a pool or whatever it is? Do we want to be able to talk to people and have deep conversations and sort of interact? Or do we want to burn a whole bunch of 200 million year old seashells? What is it? What's more important? I would say the former than the latter.
Right.
So if we can do that better without having to do all the burning of these old fossil seashells. Why would we not want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Right.
would we insist on saying, well, the only thing I could do is burn my fossil fuels? Well, they are very concentrated and they give you like a sugar rush. They do things that there's advantages. There's reasons that happen. There's reasons that we do that. I'm not going to, we're, we exist right now. You and I are talking because of a great deal of things that have
Technology
to do
for sure.
that was spurred by and supported by the fact that energy was cheap
Mm-hmm.
and that there was an awful lot of bang for your buck in a barrel of crude oil, and that solar energy, exactly the inverse. Solar energy is thinly spread everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's diffuse. And you think about things differently when it's diffuse. And you think about wind, and both solar and wind are intermittent. That means they happen when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing.
Right.
So we think about things differently. When we burn something with coal or natural gas or some of the other
We know
fossil fuels,
exactly when it's going to be
we know
effective.
exactly when, or we
Yeah.
think we do, and most of the time we do.
Yeah.
So there are reasons, there are benefits. It's not, there are benefits for it, but the benefits, I think, no longer outweigh the deficits. Because the price we pay for all of that is large, and we've ignored it for a long time.
Right.
And now we have to think differently. And part of thinking differently is, as you were saying before, bringing ourselves back in closer into balance with the natural system. So we
Mm-hmm.
need to burn less. So what does having plants on your roof do? It means you're getting the benefit, you're getting a whole lot of cooling and insulation benefits. What does that mean? You need less energy. So whatever your energy source is, you need less of it.
Right.
That's good.
Yes.
That's where we want to be. We don't want
For
to be
sure.
using as much energy. We want to be using less. But we're not getting less value out of it. We're not colder. We're
True
not,
story.
you know, that's the benefit. We
Mm-hmm.
get the same value as living individuals and humans, and people get the same value of society, but we're not consuming as much one-way material to
Mm-hmm.
get to that same value.
Right.
And we're doing that because we're thinking differently and we're acting about the whole and not
Yes.
about a piece of it.
Yes. So how does it work? I mean, I'm picturing, a flat roof, and I know a lot of roofs are not flat, but like a lot of businesses and
Right.
like apartment buildings would have like a flat roof in cities.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I will say this, in Europe, where they're way ahead of us, they
Of
actually
course.
are putting green roofs on steep buildings through various kinds of ingenious and inexpensive cantilevering and ledging, terracing tools that they can apply. But
Awesome.
so that's that. But it is a legitimate limitation on what can go, and it's why commercial and industrial and large residential facilities are where this kind of green roof as a green infrastructure is likely to be in its first place. And like most new technologies, it's being adopted by people as showcases. So there are a few fairly wealthy institutions or individuals who have fancy homes who like to
Hmm.
put them on. And there's there are, in New York City, for example, the Javits Center, which is a big public facility, big public facility for meetings and places. Convention center is the word. They have a ginormous green roof. We can talk about the benefits and sort of the missed opportunities there. And there's some other things. One of the largest green roof that we've built is on, is by in a hospital called the Einstein um, Hospital up in the Bronx, and it's 14,000 square feet. It's not small.
That's not
Um,
small at all. No, I was going to ask if you had any like in use already, if you put
Yeah,
it
we have
in
we
a
have we
trial.
have a couple we have a couple that are both. That's one. Another one that we like to share is on a tool factory, and that's a 10,000 square foot industrial facility that makes precision parts, and it's a particularly good example because he's making precision parts, which means he needs a temperature controlled environment.
Oh, yeah.
So controlling the heating and cooling at the top, plus Mike's he loves to eat, so he gets a garden at the top where he can grow his tomatoes, and he can actually
Oh,
feed
good.
his workers at the top. So
Okay, so I was going to ask about that too, because when you say greening a roof, or greening cities and putting um, soil and stuff on a roof, I'm thinking gardens because I'm always thinking about food. But how is the accessibility? And again, that's
that's
going to be
all.
this different for each building, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
that's all site specific. But okay, so basically, um, there are two kinds of the way the industry is grown. There's two kinds of green roofs that people put together, and they're called simple and complex. Okay, not very hard. So a simple green roof, which is what's at the Javits Center, is where you put in it's and most you put in a large area, and you grow something like sedum. Sedum is a succulent plant that grows very nicely in a
Doesn't
lot
need
of different
water.
places. Doesn't need water, so
Yeah.
it's there for convenience. The flip side of growing something like sedum is you lose a big chunk of the benefits that I was talking about of green roofs, because it doesn't take up much water, so you're not getting
Right.
the water
So if it
benefit.
gets a lot of
It's
water,
small and low. It's small and low, so it doesn't have a lot of the transpiration of healing and cool. So you get some of the benefits, but they're
mhm,
much reduced. The virtue of it is most roofs, green roofs to date, use some kind of mixture of soil mixture that's pretty heavy. So you can't put too much of it on. So sedum for many places is a compromise answer that allows you to have some of the benefits of green. Now, an intensive or a complex green roof, an intensive green roof, needs to have 6 to 8 inches minimum of plant cover, but that's a minimum. You can grow
as
trees
tall
if
as
you
you want. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, you can do other things depending on your soil structure.
Oh my
The
gosh,
reason
wildflowers would be so
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. And what are wildflowers great about, or any kind of native plants? They're used to the sedum is not a native plant to the Northeast, right?
Right.
But meadow plants are. There's plenty of meadow plants all over the Northeast you could put in
Hmm.
to basically use native plants. And those native plants, obviously change depending on your geography. What advantage do native plants do? They need a whole lot less maintenance.
Right.
They need some, but they need a whole lot less.
Right.
And why, and wouldn't that be a good thing? So there
Mhm.
you're getting a benefit of your ongoing costs get reduced because you're using plants that are adapted to the local environment.
Mhm.
You still need to water them. You still need to do all kinds of other things, and we can
Right.
talk about some of that in a second. Um, so getting back to the roof. So a roof needs to, so most roofs are built to a certain engineering structure, and the minimum holding capacity in New York City and much of the country is roughly 30 pounds per square foot. Okay.
Okay.
Unless it's
That's
designed.
limiting then.
Yeah, that's a big limiting factor, which is why the Gaia soil, which is the soil that my colleague invented out of styrofoam. And remember, styrofoam is a problem. We're using styrofoam very explicitly because it's a waste material. It's a waste material that doesn't go away, that persists, that we don't know what to do with. And even though they're banning it, they're still making a whole lot of it despite everybody's stuff. So there's going to be a whole lot of it for a long time. But if you
Well, yeah,
took
because
that,
it doesn't biodegrade.
because it doesn't biodegrade, and we're not stopping making it,
Right.
even though we say we are. Okay, so what do we do with all the styrofoam? Well, right now, the styrofoam goes into landfills or other kinds, it depends on the local laws of what you do. Um, and some of it breaks down, and if it's in waterways, it collects as those little styrofoam bubbles and granules that
Mm.
and those things do actually, because they're exposed to sunlight and heat, those can break down and turn into microplastics. So, but what if you took that styrofoam, or you took significant amount of that styrofoam, and you repurposed it in a place where where it wouldn't be exposed to sunlight, it wouldn't degrade at all, and it would actually help you create an artificial soil that was lighter than water, that would actually float above water, that would allow you, because it's not compressible, would allow you to maintain its air and porosity factors, which means it can stay bio active indefinitely over time. Just
Hmm.
you have to feed it more nutrients periodically, but its basic structure stays rich, and it will then allow you to grow. It'll allow you to put fully loaded with a 6 to 8 inch plant place. It's under 25 pounds per square foot,
Right.
which means in fact, in some cases 22 pounds per square foot. So, and it's insulated because it's styrofoam. It's a very efficient insulator. So you get not only your heating effects, you get really strong insulating effects in the wind. So if you take that, that allows you to put that green roof on many more kinds of roof structures with a lot less engineering. You're always going to have to do an engineering report to make sure you can do something like this at the moment.
Right.
But so that allows you to put what we call these intensive green roofs, these complex green roofs, on many, many, many different kinds of building shapes. And of course, the most effective one logically is large rectangular buildings, because you get most, and in the United States, we have a lot of large rectangular buildings.
Sure.
And so that's the, you know, that's the first place you want to look at it
Right.
for its functional use. And then when we started, we were talking about why is green infrastructure slow on the uptake? Why isn't it scaling? And a couple of the big reasons it's not scaling are, one, its initial price point's too high, and that's a product of a lot of normal business cycles.
Sure.
And the other thing is it isn't modular. It isn't easy to do. When the kind of roofs we're talking about, you lay out a whole lot of a roof flooring, then you lay out a whole lot of roofing material, and then you're basically creating a yard somewhere
From nothing.
from
Yeah.
nothing. Okay. So, and that's good and that's fine. And and in terms of volume, it's pretty cheap. But what if you could make sort of basic discs, and each disc was itself a hexagonal 3 foot in diameter, hexagonal tray that was filled with your green roof soil and pre-planted with seeds, and with a, biofabric, maybe a burlap cover that would biodegrade, that you just needed, and it was connected in a way that you basically were hydrologically it functioned like a yard, and each one cost $15 to $20. And so you could basically take, if you have a little porch, or I'm sorry, little rooftop, balcony, you could take 3 of them and put them out there. If you have a roof that's kind of an odd shape, you can fit your odd shapes to that. Eventually, when you get into slants and cantilevered roofs and pitched roofs, you'll have, some various mechanisms. And suddenly you're going to your local hardware store, and instead of needing some really skilled technicians, you need the equivalent of your local plumber, or if you're a good DIY person, you could do it yourself.
Right.
And then suddenly your cost of a roof goes down from hundreds of dollars a square foot to tens of dollars a square foot. And then you get all these other benefits. So that's the goal. That's getting, and those are the 2 things that are needed. One is the technology gets better, and it gets cheaper. And 2, the availability starts being, and the flexibility starts being available. So it becomes a commodified product, not a specialty product that needs to be, for individual use cases, one-of-a-kind use cases that are unique and meaningful, and signature events and signature buildings and signature stories.
Wow. I mean, that just sounds like for me, it sounds like a no-brainer. Like if you have that type of a roof, because one, if you are growing plants on a roof, you can add produce like vegetables, fruits, stuff like that. And so then you're like feeding yourself, feeding people, whatever, but also like the amount of cooling that you are doing. You're like a hero to your neighborhood.
You're a multiple. Yes, you can take a green, once you build an intensive green roof, it's your decision what you grow there. And that's, you have, if you're going to grow trees, obviously you're not going to be able to rely on the same weight structure. Yeah. You're not going to be able to, that 30 pounds a square foot is not going to hold a tree. But if you're growing vegetables,
right,
sure. of
It's not
course.
the big squash because that will.
Right. It's not your 200-pound watermelon or your hero, yeah, your hero pumpkin or all those kinds
Right.
of things.
Yes, totally. I love this idea for so many reasons. And so who are the ideal customers for this? Are you thinking like apartments? Are you thinking warehouses?
I'm thinking,
And
well,
then who's going to be the easiest sell, like to
okay,
get this going?
so those are really good business questions. So one of the reasons New York City is kind of an interesting place is flat roofs and rectangular spaces are not unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that would be a great, if we could get New York going, it would be such a good template for other cities.
Pretty much New York City. Okay, New York City is, oh, New York City has a particular uh, interest in this kind of green roof technology to the point where uh, they actually have a huge subsidy program for the right person to come in that will almost pay the full cost of installing the roof. The
For real?
trade-off is you have to maintain it for 20 years,
Right.
but but if you're willing to maintain that roof for a minimum of 20 years, they're willing to give you to provide a subsidy equivalent to almost the amount it costs, and maybe sometimes the full amount that it costs, depending
That's
on how you design.
incredible.
It is. Now it's New York City, so of course the red tape is ferocious and it's kept it from
Is that information easy enough to gather?
being nearly as good. New York City, yes, there's a green roof subsidy program. It's unique to New York City, unfortunately, not to New York State. And I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know of I don't know of another city in the country that has quite as generous a program. But basically, as I was saying earlier, green roofs deal with several of any city's major issues. Two in particular, three in particular, are really, really important. They deal with the heat island effect. They deal with it better than painting a roof white, which is cheaper but not as good. They deal with it better than um, most of the other solutions that people have. But the white paint is, that's the quick and, we're good at quick and dirty solutions that are
Sure.
not as good as they should
That
be.
you have to do over and over and over again.
Right, right.
Now, did you have something to do with this, getting this subsidy going?
No, no, it came because, you know, actually I have to say it came under Mayor Bloomberg. So it's been around for a while.
Okay.
And Bloomberg was many things to many people, but he was a very smart guy in terms of thinking about the environment and the ecology of a place like New York City. So he was very forward thinking and putting together he got some very good people and they did some very forward thinking
Awesome.
plans. Yeah, we could
But
talk
and
about
then,
some
but
other
he
things
went
that he
away
did.
and the subsidy did not.
The subsidy did, and that's another of the things that he did that was very smart. He built structures that didn't rely on his particular presence being there for them to be there. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he was absolutely, and the subsequent mayors after Bloomberg maintained it. The next mayor liked it, and you know so it gets the heat island effect. As I mentioned, plants adhere pollutions. They pollute the sub 2.5 micron particles, which is the most significant air pollution problem in most urban areas today. So they significantly help with that. And of course, they store stormwater. And as I think we talked earlier, New York City has a significant stormwater recovery problem. And so over time, New York City's also built in some very, very strong legislation that are going to require all buildings over a certain size to capture every inch of rainfall that falls on their property. So it just can't, so to protect the city's sewer
Right.
system from overflowing. So that's why they did the subsidy, because they recognized that one piece of green infrastructure solves three of their major problems. And oh, by the way, it has major advantages for the property owner because it reduces their heating and cooling bills significantly
Right. Okay.
and potentially their maintenance over their roof structure significantly. So it has major benefits for the property owner. It has very big social benefits for the city. And overall, if you do enough of it, it has regional benefits for the microclimate, if you do
Mm-hmm.
enough. So from those perspectives, it was a pretty good idea for them. And that's essentially why they did it. And we're working hard to get the kind of word out about that this exists and that these kinds of subsidies are beneficial to a
Right.
lot of people.
Tell all the other cities.
Yeah. And I mean, the challenge is that obviously you need a commitment from the building owner to maintain it. And, the way that commitment is structured can be kind of a challenge for different kinds of landlords and homeowners, because you're basically signing a legal commitment that you're going to be maintaining a particular kind of thing for 20 years. And, we're in this immediate opportunity society, and it's really hard for a lot of us to think 20 years in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, you look at a city in New York, most of the buildings we're talking
Right.
about are way, even in most parts of the United States now, we're going to be our 250th anniversary as a country, which means a big chunk of the buildings we have are older than 20 years. We think of ourselves as a brand new little place that showed up right now.
Right.
But I think that's one of the ways we have to, we have to put our big boy pants on and realize we're a big boy country, and we got to do things that look to the future, not just
Right.
not just in
It's
the.
not about us anymore.
So us is about the future.
True.
That's that's
That's the 80s mentality, right?
right,
The
exactly. We have to
70s were very open, the 80s were all excess, and
right.
I joke
And
about that, but that's
yeah, well,
very true.
that's the epoch that coined the phrase "greed is good."
Yeah. Yep. I love that. I think that's so smart, and I'm so glad that the education is already in place
Mhm.
for the apartment owners and stuff like that
Right.
in New York. Um, and so
It's a
they just
slow
need to.
process. It's a
It's a
slow
slow
process.
process, but it's in use, and
Mhm.
the people that are using it are happy.
Mhm.
So they just need to tell their friends
Right.
in the
No,
other cities.
yeah, no, I've one of the buildings that we have, as I mentioned, he grows tomatoes. He's our best evangelist. I mean,
Yeah.
he loves what he's doing. He loves the roof. He's gotten so much benefit from it. His workers have benefits from it. Everybody, he's put solar up over time, which is another co-benefit, because solar and green roofs play together very well in the sandbox, because
Mm.
solar cells really require a temperature regulation just like a computer does. So they're tuned to their maximum efficiency in a factory at roughly 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So
Mm.
if they're up on a roof,
Right. It's not
or excuse me,
78
that could
so
be
much.
140, 150 degrees
Yeah.
on top of a roof. They've lost 35, 40, 50, almost sometimes as much as 50% of their efficiency.
Mm.
If you put them over a green roof, and of course there are plenty of shade tolerant plants, and this is actually a great place for moss to grow, in fact, under certain conditions, because it's a really great plant for absorbing carbon
Yeah.
and cooling things, but it needs shade and water.
Hmm.
Um, you can drop that down to 110, 100, so you can drop it down 35, 40 degrees, even more. Um, and suddenly your solar panels are operating at 80% of their factory things, or even 90% of their factory
Right.
tuned efficiencies. And so everybody wins.
Right.
So that's another thing of these things where if you're thinking about complex interconnected systems that have mutual dependencies and you understand them, everybody would, you get these situations where there are additive benefits. And the other thing I don't want to forget about is a well-designed ecological piece of infrastructure, something that I like to call ecostructure, gets better over time.
Hmm.
It grows. Anything you build with concrete, even unless you're the Romans who knew how to build things forever, but anybody else, it depreciates over time. It
Sure.
gets weaker. It has to be replaced.
Exposed to the
So
elements
you have
and
it. So when you build with and think ecologically, you create what they call appreciating assets. The asset gets more valuable over time with care. almost everything else we do in society is a depreciating asset. It gets less valuable with time, even though you still have to provide maintenance. And
Right.
eventually it has to be replaced. So that's one of the many sort of not very well understood benefits of using natural systems. They
Right.
appreciate, they get richer, they get stronger. A forest grows, you start with a garden. If you're growing a garden, not a food garden because you're harvesting it for food, but if you're growing, a rose garden or any other kind of garden, and year one, it's one way. Year two, it's another.
It spreads a little bit.
Year
Yeah.
150, you're going into that garden. Oh my God, what are you looking at?
Right.
You know,
It
that's
just
not the
takes care of
case.
itself. Yeah.
Well, you need to take care of it, but it pays you back for the care you
Mm-hmm.
give it in multiples.
Right.
You're not keeping, so that's what an appreciating asset does.
Right.
That's what an ecologically informed infrastructure does when designed well and maintained appropriately, of course.
Yeah. Gosh, this is just it's so fascinating and so exciting, really, that it's already being I mean, it's already being used in Europe, but in the
Right,
US, we're just getting
right,
started. But it's already in place in New York
right.
City, at least. And
And
so
mhm. There are
y'all, if
green
you're
roofs
living in a
everywhere.
city that
Yeah.
has an apartment building with a flat roof, please get in touch with Joshua and have him hook you up, because this has gotta, it would only benefit everyone.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people doing green roofs everywhere. They're all as we've sort of talked about. There are different kinds of green roofs
Hmm.
for different kinds of places, and you don't have to do it. I just want to say this same basic idea can play out on your sidewalk. It can play out in your front yard. It can play out. It's not it's not limited to roofs.
Right,
Roofs are a good place, but if weight is a problem, then
right,
you might have a patio for a sidewalk. Does that patio have to be a patio?
right,
Does that, or does all of it have to be paved over?
right,
Does your sidewalk have to just be concrete? Can your sidewalk be made more porous? And there's a bunch of different ways to think about that. You can actually take your tree pits, your trees, and expand them out. And they have these terms they call that a bioswale, where you're actually digging a pit to hold water. And you can do that in a bunch of different ways. You can actually use different materials so that the hard surface has holes in it of various kinds, or lets water permeate through into the soil below so it doesn't run off. All of these things benefit. And if you have a street and you're growing, or you have a backyard or a front yard or even a porch, you know, it's useful to remember you can grow a lot of food in a small place if you're
right.
interested.
Yes.
I mean, I think we talked about this a little earlier in our pre-call, but you know, one of the most amazing things to me about all of this is that when we want to in the United States, we do pretty cool stuff. And during World War II, when we were in a wartime scarcity moment, 25% of the vegetables people ate were homegrown.
Hmm.
We weren't as urban as we were now, but we still were plenty urban. They called them victory gardens. They just justified it as a war effort, all these different things. But we grew 25% of
Right.
our
Just whatever space you could find.
whatever space you could
Yeah.
find. And we can do that today without any additional cost and anybody. And it's kind of fun. As you know, you're a gardener.
Yeah.
It's fun. It pays you back.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know,
just last weekend, I was talking to somebody who lives right downtown, in my area, and she has her plants in containers on her little balcony.
right.
And it's like her haven.
And
She's got little
right.
lawn chairs, and she'll just sit out there and she'll talk to her plants, and they all have names.
Well, of course they do. And that's part of, again, that's the other thing, another thing that your friend manifests. Being in a natural environment has real human benefits,
Hmm.
benefits that are so profound that we actually have not recipes, prescriptions for what they call forest bathing in multiple countries.
Hmm.
Germany has them, Japan has them, a number of other places have them, where they actually you have various kinds of illnesses. ranging from depression to various kinds of physical ailments. And your prescription is to go spend 2 hours in a park. Okay. People, people find that surveys show that when you have a wood interior in a building, people's well-being in that building dramatically, measurably increases.
Oh,
Over,
interesting.
so one of the many, which is another related thing, when we use natural materials that can be perceived as natural, people feel way, way, way more relaxed and more comfortable.
Oh.
So all of these things are, again, they all fit together,
Hmm.
um, but the other piece, just for keep the gardening, is that many cities and around the country have done something. They've taken abandoned lots and turned them into community gardens of various kinds, and that can be expanded.
Hmm.
They can also take, as they recapture roadways, they can put, there's one of the most famous avenues in New York is called Park Avenue. Okay. Well, Park Avenue is a really great example of urban reuse. Park Avenue was created when they built this giant train station, Grand Central Station, over where the big railways that went north from New York to Albany, Canada, and the rest of the country went out of. They went straight north out of Grand Central Station. There was a giant hole in the ground with these train tracks and of course, at that point, trains were all steam and coal. So they
Right.
spewed out all kinds of crap. And so nobody wanted to live next to that because you walked two
Of course.
seconds and you were covered with soot.
Choking.
So
Yes.
they had the really ingenious idea to cap the railway cut. They capped the railway cut, they put a road on it, and for the first 40 or 50 years of that road, it was a tiny little road with two little carriageways in it, one in each direction, and the rest of it was garden. And hence it was called Park Avenue. That's
I love that.
Yeah, and we could come back to that, and that's plant structure. All of that's green. All of that adds to this conversation of how do we bring leafy green materials back into the urban infrastructure. There's never one with a natural system. There's never one answer. There's always a lot of answers working together.
Sure. Oh my goodness. Um, and it's such a good point. And I've said it many times, just, grow things wherever you can. If you have space in your yard, do that. If you have a patio or a balcony, do container gardening. It's actually container gardens can be really great because you can move things out of the sun or into the
Mhm.
rain or something like that if you need
Right,
to.
right,
But it's all, there's the emotional benefit, there's also the food benefit and cooling benefits.
right. So all of those things are very real,
Yeah.
and they become very personal.
Yes.
And so, and the other piece of that, which since we're throwing out I have a long
You've
laundry
got a
list
few
of
more
reasons
benefits.
that they're good. But think about what it means to be gardening. Think about that engagement. Think about how how distant we are from most of our food. And think about how that changes when you know what a tomato looks like. You know what a ripe tomato is. You know what a vegetable should be. You know what it smells like.
You know what it smells. I was thinking
You,
that. You know what it
you know,
smells like.
you know what it feels like. It's not wrapped in plastic. It's not containerized. It's not shipped from 1,000 miles away or 10,000 miles away. It's not like a raspberry that's grown in Chile and shipped on God knows what and gets over to you and is put in 5 different kinds of containers. And then
Hmm.
you get it. It's something, so that's one piece. So that piece, but the other piece that it has, and what that is it reminds people that we have agency over our lives and we have connections to our lives and we have ways that we actually have more ownership about what makes us feel good, and be effective than we know. And one of the ways we can capture that is by reconnecting with the work in the real world. And gardening is a really, really powerful way to do that.
Yeah.
And it gets kids in urban deserts to have a connection with the world that they might not otherwise have a chance. And it's not hard. Schools can have gardens, you know, Right. Hospitals can have gardens.
Oh my gosh.
Old
Hospitals
age
could have
homes.
gardens on their roofs.
They could have gardens on their roofs, and they can have indoor gardens too, because they
Like
offer.
free food,
They can
practically.
absolutely practically. They could schools could start to provide some significant portion of their meals with homegrown gardens. And there's lots and lots of answers to that. And
Yeah.
there are movements to do that. They just need to be supported and
Yep.
expanded. None of
Yeah.
these things are unknown. They're all movements in various places. They just need to be encouraged, expanded, and grown in whatever flavor the local community wants to make it happen.
Oof, that's so, so good. And I am a firm believer in that. The hospitals I don't think of as much. I always think of schools, but that makes so much sense to have, those hospitals are humongous and they have these huge flat roofs.
Right. And what about elder care? What about old age homes? I mean, what a wonderful occupational therapy on one end, and
Hmm.
what a great environmental benefit on another. And of course, I last time I was in an old age home with my grandmother, it wasn't like the food was something you went there for. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go, go here for no, or hospitals are the same. But so there's a lot of these sort of, I talked a little bit earlier, is what we really want is to improve our quality of lives. We want to
Hmm.
live better and be better people. And cheap energy gives us the illusion that we need convenience. And I think we need meaning.
I agree.
And so that's where the benefit of reconnecting plays out in all the intangibles. We call these things priceless, and then we let go of it. But really, priceless means we haven't figured out what its real value is. And we tend to ignore things that we don't have a price on. And I think this is a case where we actually have to look for the things we can't price and say, that's the valuable stuff.
Hmm.
That's the really price. Let's take that word, it's priceless, but let's take it seriously. It is priceless.
Right.
Like a beautiful view of an ocean vista from the right place, that's priceless. Okay. So let's say what that means. It's not you shouldn't pay attention to it. It means you should preserve it.
Right.
You should make it accessible so that other people can share it.
Yep.
That's what priceless, that's the value it brings. And so those are where all of these things, and those are the places and the pieces and the things that we can do to help technically get us closer. Again, they build on each other. They gain critical mass. And when they gain critical mass, they start being replicated in other places independently. And when they start being replicated independently, they have their own improvisational characteristics, and they develop differently locally according to self-generating patterns. This is complexity theory, which is what we're fighting against.
Hmm.
What we have now is something that wants to make everything look the same. We want to make everything be the same. We want to have the same thing everywhere for the same reasons, at the same this and the same that. Our benefit of the lives we want to live in the places are when every place is particular to its own lived experience. And bringing ecological infrastructure, thinking about green roofs as one of a constellation of things, thinking about solar energy not as a factory farm of energy, not as a 500,000 acre factory farm. So now you've just replaced one monoculture with another,
Right.
but it's something that falls everywhere and then gets distributed everywhere. And something so instead of covering, farmland with solar panels, why not cover the stuff that's already in concrete? Why not
Right.
cover highways? Why not cover parking lots? That's what they're doing in France. That's what they're doing in Japan. That's what they're doing in other countries where they're thinking where there's more forward thinking. I'll give one example of that so, so in 1978, I'm in college. So the first Earth Day, I'm in junior high school. All right. Just in California, in San Diego. And at that point, they had just built this thing called the Central Aqueduct. And it was their big, shiny new thing. They took water from the wet country land in Northern California down through the desert. And it's this big open pit, open trench, unlined concrete canal
Okay.
running through 300 miles of semi-arid, hot weather. And in 1970, in junior high school, even us junior high school kids could say, why is it open? Aren't you losing a lot of like water to, yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. And cut to now, it's still a largely unlined open trench.
Wow.
But finally, after, now almost 50 years or more after, us dumb junior high school kids were sort of saying to the various people who were showing us these things, shouldn't we put a cap on that? Shouldn't we keep the water if the water's supposed
hold on
to
to
go,
that water?
yeah, is the water supposed to go down to, and if Los Angeles is so-called running out of water, and you can save 30% of the water that doesn't get evaporated by capping it, wouldn't that be a smart thing? And now let's add the energy piece. Now, wouldn't that be a really smart thing to cap and put a bunch of solar panels on, because they could be cooled by the water, they could be
Right.
there. And just to throw a little bit more on the thing, the largest single point source of electricity consumption in California, in the entire state, the fourth largest economy in the world, the most populous state in the union, is the power pumps that pump the water in that canal over what they call the Tehachapi Grade. That's the mountains that on the other side of Los Angeles that it has to go from. It goes from the Central Valley over the mountains down into Los Angeles. Now, if they covered the entire canal with solar panels, they would generate enough power to almost zero out that power consumption.
Oof.
And if they had done that if the ideas first showed up, or at least when solar energy became reasonably affordable,
If you were old enough to make your own money and make that happen, because you were just in
right,
college, you're just a kid. What
right.
do you know?
But those are a lot of what we're talking about is you need the kids to tell you, because they're the ones that tell you the emperor has no clothes.
Right. Right.
That fable is really important, because it's the kids who aren't brainwashed, the
Mhm.
kids who haven't been trained out of thinking. It's the kids who still have the wisdom to be curious
Yep.
and to ask the really important why questions that we get trained out of us as we get older, with the because.
Yep.
Well, because we've always done it that way. Well, that's
Right,
not true.
right.
With solar energy,
Yeah,
we
exactly.
use solar energy a lot.
Yep.
So it's not that we've never used solar energy. So that because is kind of silly.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to do a quick shout out to Bobby Donahue, who I talked to a few months ago about this very thing. He's teaching kids about climate change because they have the creativity. We're so stuck in our ways, we can't see anything new. And so he wants to include kids in the conversation.
He's so right.
This just reminds me of that so much.
He's so right. Kids are so smart. And we want to capture that. And we have done so much harm to the kids today. We have given them such a sorry planet to inherit, that we really owe them the accountability of letting them be part of the decision making of the future. So I think that's great. I encourage that.
Yeah. Well, but so it's so much to think about, Joshua, and I think that it's such a beautiful and a meaningful topic. Like, everything's, as we're talking the end of July. It's the end of July.
I know.
And
Amazing.
it's like we're in this crazy heat wave nationwide pretty much. So greening just makes so much sense. And also, greening the buildings, greening the city, and also, using that soil, that space to grow food where we're about to have food shortages, and
Sure.
food is such a scarce thing these days in some areas. There's less area to grow, so let's use the space that we have. It all just makes so much sense, and so I'm so grateful that you brought this topic to us. But so, Joshua, when I say the word sustainability, I know you have thoughts on sustainability. But what does that mean to you personally?
Well, for me, sustainability is kind of an interesting word, because what I want it to mean and what I think it means aren't essentially the same.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. what I want it to mean is living a life that where we can thrive over time and where things get where the act of living encourages the act of more living, not just for us as human beings, but for the entire planet. But when I understand sustainability and what it actually means, it means to maintain the status quo.
Right.
And maintaining the status quo is exactly what we don't.
Absolutely.
So, so the spirit behind sustainability is something I absolutely respect. But as a word, I try not to use it very much.
I had a feeling that was coming. And it's not the first time it's happened. I actually really enjoy it because it's this podcast is a lot about curiosity and that just like it really makes you think. Like, what does the word mean to you? And so many people are like, I've been thinking about that and I just don't know what to say. And so it means something different to everyone, but really, um, the end game is we don't want things to stay the way they are. That's why we're having these conversations.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's an interesting thing to bring up.
Right. That's why more and more in the community, you're hearing regenerative things,
Hmm.
resiliency and regeneration have taken over
Eco-friendly. Yeah.
yeah, have taken over from sustainability in
Yep.
a lot of places, and they're getting overused. The problem that we have is words have meanings that sometimes they wear out,
Hmm.
and they stop being important, meaningful, and resonant, and start being trite and shorthand and
Buzzwords.
buzzwords, and
Yep.
and less valuable because of that.
Right.
So language matters. Language
Hmm.
is important,
Right.
and so it's a critical piece of how we understand the world we're in. So it's important to continually be sort of checking the language that we use, because the way we spoke 100 years ago and the way we speak today is different for a lot of reasons. And some of the ways, we know this from the way we talk about ordinary relations. We don't talk about relationships between people today the way we talked about them 100 years ago. And people of good conscience 100 years ago would say things that today we wouldn't say.
Hmm.
And in 100 years from now, they'll talk about things in good conscience that we wouldn't, that they'll talk about things and they'll look at the way we speak and they'll say, oh my God, that's the
Right.
way they said that? No way. That's,
Right. Totally. So you guys, is he not super duper smart? Like that I almost did sort of like a like a warning. Like if you're watching this, you might see my eyes glaze over because this is some of it feels like it might be over my head. But Joshua is so kind to like talk to me.
oh no,
We
it's my
had this
pleasure.
pre-call so you sort of know where I'm at. But so I think it's such an important topic, cooling our cities and and it solves so many problems. We just need to utilize it and I'm totally impressed that New York City has the subsidies to help to
Yeah.
grow this.
I mean, New York City gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, but in terms of climate, it's a very forward thinking place. And I think and it needs to be, just then I'll just do one
Just
more,
for the sheer volume. Yeah.
yeah, because, and that sheer volume and the fact that it has stacked residences more than most cities do, and it has mass transit more than most cities in the United States do. Those two things make New York City one of the most energy efficient communities in the country. And
Oh,
certainly,
that's so interesting. Okay. Yeah, that
and
makes
not
sense.
yeah, because why? Because we have shared, I mean, one of the key elements of energy efficiency is sharing resources. And
Mhm.
for better or for worse, and some people like it more than others, New
Right.
York City shares more resources than most other cities in the country.
That is really smart. That makes a lot of sense.
And that's density. That's because of the density.
Right. Wow. Okay. So, um, Josh, how do we find you? How can someone find you, learn more about everything that you've been doing for the last 50 something years and
Okay.
just become better stewards of our space?
Well, you can find me at Leaf Island which is leafisland.org.
Oh, easy.
Just that, very easy to get. My other website is a lot harder, but I'll give it a shot here. It's called Center for Force Majeure.org. So it's CenterForForce.org. And
And I'll have that in the show notes, you guys. Don't worry about that.
okay, that's good. And I'm happy to chat with people about green roofs. I'm happy to talk through. We do a lot of work that's beyond what we've talked about here, and so some of it's available on the website, and you can look through and see what's up. And I really appreciated the chance to spend some time with you, Amy. It's been a real pleasure for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating thing and so timely, I feel like. And clearly you've done more than green roofs. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been studying for so long, and it's very clear that you are super eco-minded, and there's just so much to learn from you. So I'm super grateful for this time.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for having the kind of podcast that lets people at whatever level they want to come to engage at whatever level they want to do. I mean, I think one of the things that I don't think that podcasts allow us to do is it just democratizes the conversation. And that's really great, because why should the conversation be only in universities or only in strange rarefied places or boardrooms or courtrooms or wherever other rooms they have that aren't open to the general public?
Right. Absolutely.
Why shouldn't it be in your room, my room, our room, everybody's room?
Yeah. So it is.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, how do I get there from here? 'Cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness. We'll heal the hate with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here and now I'm so state of grace has finally found me. Well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears and wonder